our hope is we are going to have a lot of people showing up for the very first time. And then our goal as church leaders, of course, is how do we help people stay connected after the holiday? And Amy, I want to start with you, focusing again on the first time guests. What should we be doing before, during, after? You can pick one or all of them if you want, to encourage first time guests to come back as it relates to the service experience itself.
Sure. And I don't think any of this is going to be rocket science, but I was thoughtful about this, Tony, because there's some things I think we just need to remember and test our Easter service plan against to make sure we don't forget some of these things. But when it comes to first time guests, I think before the service, Kim just, she was right. Invite friends, that personal invite. Before coronavirus, the most effective way to bring people to church was through a personal invite. And today that is the same. Like you said, social media is saturated right now. So be personal about that invite. During the service, let them know what you're going to be talking about in the weeks to come. You want to promote kind of the next series or the series of messages that you're going to be talking through, as long as it relates to where they're at today. Hopefully we're answering the questions that they're asking. And if the service is done really well, I think it's good to normalize that experience. So if they took 35, 40 minutes on Easter, and it was a really great experience, I would just reaffirm to them, this is what we do every week. We hope you come back. And after the service or towards the end of the service, at Unstuck, we state the win for the service is that people are glad they came, that they want to come back, and that they would actually invite a friend with them. So if we've done that, I think here's some practical next steps for people.
Go slow on that again. I hope everybody heard that. How do we view the win for a weekend service, Amy?
The win for a weekend service is first, people are glad they came, that they want to come back again, and they want to invite a friend. It was that meaningful to them. So
absolutely.
So at the end of the service, invite them to join again. Encourage your listeners to set aside time to come and do this again, because the truth is right now, especially, we all need to be encouraged. We all need to be replenished. We all need that more than ever. And that's what you're bringing. You're bringing God's word to them. So encourage them to listen, set aside time to do that. I already said it, but I'll say it again. Remind them of the practical things you're going to be talking about in the weeks to come. And be heartfelt, be genuine, be real. I think the more we can get out of any type of mode that we can get in when we're on this side of the camera, we want to work really hard to get out of it, because what we want to communicate is that we're here with you. We're all turning to Jesus. We're all turning to God to see what he has to say. In other words, we want to always be pointing people back to Jesus and not our local church, although hopefully the church is an important part of that. You can give them a way that they can request prayer. In fact, if you've got a strong prayer network, which a lot of our churches do, I'd tell them about that and ask them to share their prayer requests with you. And maybe the biggest one, be ready to address their questions. I think we need to plan as a church to be ready to address their questions. And so there's a question around accessibility. How do we become accessible for questions? How do you ready your team to actually answer those questions? When we were in the auditorium, in the room, they could go down to prayer team members. Maybe you as the pastor have stepped off the platform and can answer some questions. New guests, I think some of them are going to have some questions and they're going to want to process with someone. And so maybe anticipate with your team, what are the questions that we're going to get? And then how would we coach and how would we answer those? Because hopefully you'll need a lot of people helping with that process. So now is the time really to train your teams who are going to responding to that. And I think, Sean, you're going to share in a minute what are the different ways that they can communicate with us. But just want to say one more thing. I know there's some discussions around, are we going to record the service and then just make it available all Easter weekend? And maybe some on the panel will disagree with me. I actually think for Easter, you should have set times for your services. And here's why. If we're inviting people and we have new guests in the room, we're going to be in the moment with them this way. And when those questions do come in, whether it's texting or however you set that up through technology, I think it's really good for us to be ready at that moment and to have a plan to respond to those questions. And if it re-airs on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and people have questions, we're still ready to respond. But I think we have to be really ready when that first influx of communication comes in. So do you disagree with that, Tony?
I know. I actually like
Okay.
that idea. That's good. That's good. We'll let Kim and Sean disagree with you. Kim, let's talk about communications now for that first time guest. How can we or should we be communicating to that guest that joins us for the very first time?
Yeah, I think that how we communicate to our guests that join us for the first time is actually how we should be communicating, just period, in this time, because I almost feel like all of us have kind of been knocked down to guests because this is all new for all of us. Even people who are part of your church, because there's not our usual rhythm. There's not our usual liturgy. We don't even have there's no Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 work of it. There's no school, there's no sports, all liturgies are canceled. So bringing that clarity for our first time guests is also bringing clarity for our own people. And I've got 4 things that I think will help us with that in our communication and just take the stress off, not only how we prepare and how we organize, but how people respond. So the first thing is just give people something to be excited about, right? Like something to look forward to. Here's some examples. Amy, I don't disagree with you. You made me think for a minute. I think Easter is special. And I think it's good for us to create something special around that Easter experience. We're in this together. There's something to celebrate, that communal, we're gathering at the same time. But because of coronavirus, I would challenge us not to require scheduled service times. That is one of the things that's coming across kind of funny right now. And all of our church communications, people need church all week long, right? Mm-hmm. When they need it, they need it. So I don't disagree with you. But so here's some examples of giving people something to get excited about. We have church when you need it. We've got living room worship on demand. We've got VBS 1 hour a day, Monday through Friday, something like that. We've got access to live pastoral care on phone and live chat. You can look forward to that because we will be here for you all week. So you give them something to look forward to. 2, you give them something special that they can't get anywhere else. Don't try and recreate the wheel. What can we do that you can't get anywhere else? And so some examples I've seen, like the church should be better than anyone to help fight isolation. So what can we mention that we're doing to fight isolation? What family resources do we have or have we curated that we're making available? Can we partner with our government or our cities or people in our congregation, like mental health professionals or counselors or crisis directors that host mental health webinars? This is very important. Are we providing response for people who are in abusive relationships or in quarantine? These are things that people are struggling to find resources for. So can we give them that they can't get anywhere else? Or these virtual live groups, the virtual study groups or live prayer rooms like we had talked about. The third thing is we've got to show people where our money's going. I know there's a big conversation around how do we get people to keep coming so they keep giving? Well, that's never been the formula anyway. But what we can do is show people why it's a good return on investment. Part of this is a spiritual obedience. But right now, there are people on your elder board that are like, I don't know about that tithe. I just lost my job. Making sure we can communicate that we are being good stewards of the money that's coming in and that we're not just trying to hold everything in place. And here's one of the things we want to do: show people how the money is being directed to provide crisis care. Show them who are you partnering with in the government or in the medical field or with charities or other partners. How are you building a crisis relief fund? If you can show people where your resources are going, it elevates the confidence. It makes them want to come back. It also makes them want to contribute. And then the last thing is give them something to do. Give them a purpose. So what is the list of needs you have? What are the short-term volunteer opportunities? What are the phone numbers to call? What are the places to donate? I know one of the things that it caught me off guard. I never would have come up with this, but this is so old school. Our church posted a phone number and said, call this phone number all week long with your questions, with your concerns, with your ideas, and it's affecting our weekly gathering sermon topics. And so that it's just like you're leaving an answering machine message,
Mm-hmm.
but it's giving people something to do, like requesting a song.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would say for that.
Are we able to request songs from you, Kim?
I say yes.
All right, Sean, we started asking you about technology for streaming the service itself, but how about as it relates to the follow-up that we're doing with first-time guests? Are there some technology solutions out there that we should be considering?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Tony, you start us off. You mentioned we could have a lot of first-time guests at our church this Easter. Crisis tends to force people back towards a curiosity in spiritual things, and hopefully it does this Easter. I'm really interested to see what that response is like. And so, your online service, you have unlimited capacity to host people in your church. Kim mentioned that your website is your facility now. So, but here's the key. I think you want to focus your time following up with the people who are in your community. Those are the people that are your mission field, not the people that are in another state or another country. Those aren't the people that God has put in your mission field. So we've got to have a sense of, with our follow-up strategy, how do we know who's around us? So the first thing I'd say as far as technology, create a digital connection card. A lot of churches that I've worked with don't have one of these yet. They still have something that's in the chair or the pew. Create an online version of your connection cards. You can use a simple form creator. Google has a free option for creating forms. Use something like that, and you want to capture minimal information. Get their name, get their email, maybe their phone number. Here's a big difference, I think, now that we're having these services online. Try to capture their kids' names if they have kids. Ask for that, because we don't want to forget their kids in the follow-up. Follow-up with their kids can be really, really effective, and so that would be another thing to ask for. You can ask for other things like their Facebook profile or something like that, but don't make those things mandatory. Just keep it simple. So a digital connection card. The second thing I'd say is text them. Just utilize texting. We talked about, we're kind of going back to analog, and I know texting is not purely analog, but it's a different way to connect with them. It actually was working really well before the crisis hit. I think it's still going to work well now. It allows you direct access to people's phones. So we love Text in Church as an option for churches to follow up. It's an organization that you can work with called Text in Church. In fact, right now, I think they're offering a free 60 days of using their platform for churches. You can use it completely free. We have an online guest follow-up plan that they created that's on our website, on our coronavirus page, that you can check out. It's got a lot of information. It's really, really great. I'd encourage you to do that. unstuckgroup.com/coronavirus. I think Facebook is actually really applicable in this situation. Facebook usage has soared since we all got back in our homes and we're stuck here. So sorry, Tony. It really has. Everybody's on Facebook but you. Some churches that I've seen have actually created a closed Facebook group. So this isn't public, but a closed group, and they invite anyone who's new to their service into this group immediately following the service. And it gives them an opportunity, like many churches would, have another room after the service where new people can come in. This is a virtual room where people can come in and, meet a pastor or someone from your team. The last thing I'd say, and this is not really some amazing technology, but you're going to need a good old-fashioned calendar, whether it's on your computer or just a calendar that you can write on, because you need to be strategic with how you're following up with people. People don't need to hear from you every day of the week, but you need to calendar out strategically, when am I connecting with people? How am I doing that? And then what's my messaging going to be? I think that's going to be really important. So we'll try to include those. I know I went through that quickly, include those in the follow-up also.
Yeah, lots of web address and resources. So we'll include that in the follow-up that we're sending out to everybody. And in a moment, we do have a few minutes for Q&A here, so we're going to jump to your questions. But before we go there, I know for a lot of the pastors that are listening in, church leaders, you've been telling us, actually, we've been asking for your prayer request. And through that, what we've been hearing are some needs like this. How do we build an online engagement platform? How do we use technology in this season? Others of you have been asking, how do we process staff role changes, and along with maybe even potential compensation adjustments that may be required in this season? Others of you have been asking about kind of those critical financial challenges that you're facing, and how do we revisit our budget and reduce cost. And still others then related to that have been talking about moving to online giving strategies. And I know there are a lot of churches out there that haven't gotten to that place yet. I just wanted you to know that we're hearing those specific needs from you. And first of all, we'll continue to provide these webinars and content so that we can, as best as we can, share the best practices and the resources that we're finding to help churches like yours. But in addition to that, I know some of you are looking for just one-on-one coaching during the season, because right now it's almost overwhelming, and it's hard for you, even though all the resources are out there, to kind of mine your way through everything that's available and figure out how do we take next steps as a church. And so what we're going to be doing starting today, and you're hearing about it first, is we want to make our team available to you. And so we're going to be offering 30-day crisis response coaching for any church that's interested in this. And for the next 4 weeks, we'll give you one-on-one or one-on your leadership team coaching in your response to what needs to happen next related to the coronavirus crisis that we're all dealing with. So if that's of interest to you, you can learn more about that at the unstuckgroup.com/coaching, and we would love to connect with you immediately to be able to provide that coaching to you and to your team. All right, so with that, first question is my question, Kim. Tell us about your whiteboard.
Oh, yes, my whiteboard. Well, every day I'm trying to come up with I'm trying to be more engaged and make this more fun for me, because I feel trapped like everybody does. And so I got a new message every day, and I'm trying to keep it real. And this is world headquarters for Less Chaos, Less Noise. And I'm just reporting my numbers to OSHA. And it has only been one day since our last emotional breakdown, right?
1 day since the last emotional breakdown. Okay, good. Right. That's good to know. All right, Sean, I think this one is a good one for you, and I have some thoughts that I might piggyback with you. But this question is, how can we help our older congregants who are not tech savvy, like you are, Sean, jump on the bandwagon in this digital age? Since many of them are unplugged, it's just harder to reach them and communicate them and connect with them during this time.
Yeah. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to come alongside of them and help them get connected. I think a lot of older people, I'm even thinking about my parents, don't mention that I called them older to them, but I'm thinking about a lot of older people who need help in this season. Just, they want to engage. They don't want to be, they don't want to, but not be involved, but they just don't know how to do it. And so there are certain ways that you can do that without having to be there with them. Just get on the phone with them and start talking them through it. If they have a smartphone or a computer, do that. So that's one way, just really kind of partner with them to help them get the access they need. The other thing I've seen some churches doing is they've started to put together like care packages or bundles that include ways that people who don't have access to technology can still engage, even throughout the week, ways that they can take communion, ways they can read scripture along with you, certain times they can pray with you. So I think going, purely analog, I mean, we've just jumped back 30 or 40 years here. Think in that direction. I think that could be a good solution.
Yeah, and there's this technology. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's called the telephone, and
yes,
it's interesting. My mother-in-law is actually with us. She's been staying with us the last couple of weeks. We've been enjoying stay at home at the Morgans together, and she has received, I think now, 3 different phone calls from people at her church over the last couple of weeks, and I thought, it's brilliant and yet so basic, especially for those in the older generations. Why aren't we just reaching out with them on the phone? And she loves it, of course. I would never pick up the phone, but she absolutely loves it. Amy, I think this one's good for you. we're talking about how we move from the big production to something that's going to connect more with people, especially as they're watching from their home. But to take it a step further, I mean, in a lot of places across the country, the staff team can't even get to the church to do any sort of production related to Easter. So for those that might be trapped in their home, what any thoughts on how they might create something that could be useful even around the Easter services?
Yeah, well, Sean and Kim, you can weigh in too. The first thing that I think about is if you are truly at home and you can't get any tech help, the good news is Apple's made it pretty easy for us to be recording things and, you know, transferring files. Don't be too sloppy, I think, is my first thing. Some people are a little too relaxed when they're trying to communicate from home. I think you said, Tony, one that you saw actually had like a dog in the picture, and they had to let him out while the guy was teaching. Now, I'm sure no one on this call would go that far, but I still think you have to pay attention to environment. You're really trying to bring focus, so you want to remove distractions that would draw people away from what you're actually saying. You've got to pay attention to have some good lighting. You can see all four of us have different lighting situations, and some are probably better than others. But again, you want to bring focus to what you're teaching, so pay attention to those details. Sean or Kim, do you have any quick thoughts on that? If we don't have a production crew behind us when we're shooting something for Easter?
Yeah.
I think
Go ahead, Kim.
Go.
Now, Sean, you're more the expert. I'll follow you.
Well, I think, you know, there are some options out there. I think what you said about lighting is great. And if you have an iPhone or a smartphone, a lot of those have great cameras and recording capability. Again, going back to pre-record, you know, just do it ahead of time, work on it, do it over again if you don't get it right, so that you can ensure that it's as good a quality as you can get for your context.
Kim, we'll give the last question to you. I'll be like the newscasters. I think you have about 50 seconds for this one. You mentioned it earlier, non-intrusive rhythms of communications. What should we be thinking about as far as how often we're trying to communicate with people in this season?
Well, I don't think that is as hard of a code to break as we think it is. If we recognize that our church is a part of someone's life, not their whole life. And so if we just take a minute and we look at how we're surviving in this crisis, what do our inboxes look like? What do our inboxes look like? What does our pets and kids in the home office look like, right? And just think of what's helpful to us. And so the more clarity we can provide.
Is that your cat, Kim?
It is totally my cat.
Nice.
Sorry.
All right. Well, there you go. Let's just call it. We'll put your response in the Q&A that follows up afterwards. So I really appreciate all of you joining us today. We're praying for you on a daily basis. And if you wouldn't mind, take a moment at some time during the next couple of days and spell out specifically, how can we be praying for you? Email that to us at help@theunstuckgroup.com, or share those prayer requests on social media using #UnstuckChurch. And by the way, again, we want to help. And if one-on-one coaching would help you in this immediate season, we would love to do that. Again, you can go to theunstuckgroup.com/coaching to take those next steps. We'll look forward to seeing you same time, same place next week for the next topic that we'll be addressing as it relates to the church's response to the coronavirus. We'll see you next week.